So welcome everyone to how personal injury firms use Clio.
And a special thank you to our visionary partners. So my name is Mackenzie Kerr. I'm the Senior Manager of Product Marketing here at Clio. I have about 7 years of experience in product marketing, and I've spent the last 3 years working on personal injury software.
And my name is Andrew Leroy Rudder. I'm a personal injury lawyer practicing out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I specialize in catastrophic impairment law. I'm also a published author of the LexisNexis Inc. book called Catastrophic Impairment Law in Canada. And I'm also an active vlogger. I have a vlog series called Personal Injury Lawyer Tips, which I produce on a regular basis and publish monthly.
So in preparation for this, we dug into some of our legal trends data and found that 56% of personal injury firms who responded said that efficiency was the most important thing to managing their legal practice. So that's what we'd like to talk about today.
So today we're going to talk about how you could streamline the intake process using Clio Grow and a lot of the cool features that are associated with that, especially the automation features, which I use a lot. We'll also talk about how you create efficiency in your casework, especially with the cool new tools that are specifically designed for PI lawyers in the Clio Manage software. So we'll be talking about the new settlement calculation feature. We'll be talking a bit about the new medical records feature. We'll also talk about how you could manage client communications better by using some of the cool tools that are available through Clio, like Clio for Client apps, which I use a lot to facilitate secure communications with my clients. Ultimately, we want to give you a lot of tools for you to think about using in order to stand out from the competition. Because at the end of the day, as a PI lawyer, I'm pretty sure all of you could attest to this, it's super competitive when you're generating new leads. Clients have a lot of options and you want to stand out and do anything you can to give yourself an edge.
So we thought the best way to go about this was to take you through an entire case lifecycle. So we're going to be talking about everything from first contact to settlement and everything in between. So right up here, we have an example of a litigation process. And Andrew here is Canadian. And so these are the steps that he takes as he is building his case. I also have here an example of a PI attorney workflow. And so there may be some nuances between US and Canada. There may be some nuances between different states or provinces. But the steps in the litigation process are generally fairly similar, and we'd like to take you through that today. But before we get there, we'd like to just kind of cover a couple of the terminologies that we're going to be using today.
Yeah, just real quickly, I'm going to be talking about, just briefly, about an examination for discovery, which for my American friends, you call it a deposition. That's, of course, when you cross-examine a party who's a part of the action. You're trying to solicit, you try to get more information about that client. I'm also going to be talking about a document discovery, which for my American friends, you call fact discovery. That's, of course, an important stage of the litigation process where you're gathering all the relevant documents that are related to the issues in dispute. I'll also mention affidavit of documents, which is a sworn document by your client, which basically where they swear that they've made all reasonable efforts to gather all the relevant documents that are at issue in dispute, and they've disclosed all of them to opposing counsel. And lastly, I'll briefly talk about a notice of examination, which my American friends, you call deposition notice. That's just putting the party you're going to cross-examine on notice of the date, time, location, where you're actually going to go ahead and do that.
Great. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our case today. So let's meet our client first. So meet James. James was in an automotive accident and he needs a personal injury attorney. Now, Andrew is using Clio Grow. So we're going to be talking about this from marketing all the way through lead conversion initially and the different steps that James will be taking through that process. So first thing James is going to do is he's going to hop on Google and he's going to search for a car accident attorney near him. And because Andrew here was using Google's local service ads, those ads pop right up to the top. He finds Andrew's website and he clicks and searches around. From Andrew's website, he's able to schedule a consultation without even having to call the law firm at a time that's really convenient for him. And he's able to book that free consultation and get a confirmed notification that is set and ready to go. And because Andrew has been using Clio Grow, as soon as James books that consultation, that lead appears directly in his inbox. And then Andrew is able to manage that entire client intake process all in one place. And recently, Andrew, you were on vacation and were able to actually book a new client.
Absolutely, yeah. I had the pleasure of visiting the south of France in Lake Como a few weeks earlier. And prior to bringing Clio Grow or using Clio Grow, I was always a little nervous about going away on vacation. I invest so much time and energy into my marketing and advertising campaigns. And as you know, once you get a new lead, you have to act quickly and promptly because that new lead is looking for other potential PI lawyers that they could use to represent them. So being able to respond promptly is of the utmost importance. And when I'm away on vacation, I was always concerned about that. But with Clio Grow, I love it because it's a cloud-based software. So I'm able to manage the intake process and the steps and use automation to move that lead down the pipeline towards becoming a retained client with relative ease. I use a lot of the really cool features in there, especially with regards to automation to facilitate that. And literally I was able to sit down in a cafe, sipping on a doppio espresso con latte caldo and with some dolce and still be able to set up Zoom calls with a new lead that I got, still be able to send them the appropriate forms for them to complete to get the information with relative ease, have the email sent to that potential lead that was contacting me through the automation features. And I eventually got that client to sign a contingency fee agreement while I was still in Italy and became my client before I returned back home to Toronto.
Yeah, and I might be a little biased here because I'm in marketing, but I love to hear you talk about your marketing tips. So maybe you can share a few of those.
Yeah, sure. So before I talk into my marketing approaches, I just want to talk quickly about 5 stages that I identified in any law firm's growth, especially PI law firms. So first is lead generation. And this one's a tricky one. Arguably, this is probably the most important one because regardless of how good of a lawyer you are, regardless of how good your intake software is, you're not going to be able to use any of that if you don't have any clients. This is the one I struggled with the most. They don't teach you how to generate new leads in law school. So when I started my own law firm about 3 years ago, I had to figure all this stuff out on the fly. The next stage is lead qualification. Now, once you spend all this time investing in marketing campaigns, your advertising campaigns, and you get all these nice leads, how do you filter through all the new leads that you get? And your time is limited. I'm a big proponent of the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule. 80% of your time should be focused on 20% of the things that are moving the money needle. Anything else you should be assigning to someone else or you should be automating it. Qualifying new leads that come to you should be automated. So the next stage is a client intake and client relationship management stage. Clio Grow obviously is the one I use. I rely on that heavily. The next one is the advanced document management stage. I rely on Clio Manage, obviously. And the last one is one that's not talked about a lot that I heavily rely on, and that's the post-settlement client maintenance stage. I get a lot of referrals from the clients that I actually serve from getting good results for them. And then I try to maintain that relationship, again, through automation, sending out emails to the client periodically on their birthday, asking them how they were. It's amazing. They're the ones who can really speak for you when you're not in the room with someone else. And they have the experience with how well you provide your legal services to them. And I've gotten a number of additional referrals because I maintained that relationship with my clients after I settle their files and get a really good result for them. It's amazing how something as small as just an email saying happy birthday goes a long way. So I want to talk about some of my approaches that I've discovered in the last 3 years that really helped me out a lot. So I'm going to talk about paid traffic marketing, owned traffic marketing, and another concept called earned traffic marketing. And I'll talk a little bit more detail about what those are. So if paid traffic marketing is exactly what it sounds. It refers to ad spots that you pay for, such as on search engine result pages, as well as social network websites, similar to how you would pay for an ad space in a print publication. I use Facebook quite a bit. You could spend about $25 to $35 and get your ad in front of anywhere from 1,500 to 3,500 people. I like Facebook because it tracks over 50,000 data points on each user as they use their platform. And that really helps me target specific demographics. As a small law firm, I stay out of saturated markets such as Toronto. I really focus on underserved markets and more remote areas of the province which I live. And I'm able to pinpoint my ads to really target those specific populations very effectively with what Facebook provides. For LinkedIn, more professionals use that, for example. I still use it, but with LinkedIn, I'm not focusing on marketing that's going after the client's going to sign my retainer agreement. I'm focusing on professionals. More specifically, I'm asking myself the question, where do my clients congregate? And the answer to that question is, after they're injured, they're going to go to a rehabilitation clinic. They're going to go to a physician. So on LinkedIn, I'm focusing on those people. And once I started doing that, I started to establish relationships with a lot of owners of these rehab clinics who reached out to me. And the way I get them is that I figure out what they're looking for, and then I create ads specifically targeted towards them to give them value. And I've had so many lunch meetings with owners of these clinics, and I've slowly started to build up relationships with them where they refer clients to me. And of course, there's some quid pro quo. They want, when I get clients, I also send them to them, which I have no problem doing, because if they could offer a good service to my client and help them rehabilitate, then that's perfect. It's a win-win situation. If you go to so for own traffic marketing, you know, when I started out, my marketing budget was zero. Because I didn't settle any files yet. So I couldn't really focus on paid traffic marketing. It's something that I had to incorporate later on when I started to generate revenue from the settlements that I was making. I didn't want to do nothing. So I said strategically, how can I still get my name out there and still generate leads? So one of the things I've done was called own traffic marketing. It doesn't require an investment of your money. It requires an investment of your time. It's not something you're going to see immediate results over. It's something that's going to take time. It's like an investment in like a stock, right? It's going to appreciate in value over time. So you have to be patient, but you have to be consistent with it. It's basically the creation of your own assets. So for myself, for example, I've set up a YouTube channel, and I have a vlog series, Personal Injury Lawyer Tips, where I answer basically frequently asked questions that are commonly asked from people who are thinking about retaining a personal injury lawyer. I also have a blog that I publish every month as well, and the topic and subject matter of the blog corresponds with the topic and subject matter of the vlog. I do that because I only want to do the research once. So that's just an efficient way of getting that done. The great thing about videos is that it's really easy to repurpose the content, right? A video, you know, is comprised of frames. You can extract the frame and you have a photo. You get to take that photo and then you can put it in an ad, and then you can put some clever text on that ad, and then you can use it in your various social network websites. You could extract the audio from a video, and you could put that in a podcast covering the exact same subject matter. And in that podcast, it's a different medium. You're reaching out to a different audience. You've done no extra work. You could also take snippets of the long video that you created, and then you could parse it up, and then you can be creative with it. I take snippets of my long videos, and then I get creative with my editing, and then I use them in TikTok. I use it on Instagram, right? Different audience. TikTok, my videos are very short. They got a little music. I'm not dancing and singing, but you have to be mindful of who you're targeting. TikTok, I'm trying to target more teenage clients. As a PI lawyer, there's no discrimination. I represent clients of all ages. So I have to, again, going back to a point I made earlier, think about where your clients congregate. And you have to really fine tune your marketing approach depending on which social network website you're actually marketing on.
One thing I find really interesting is your naming conventions for your content. Maybe you can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, so that has to do with search engine optimization, and to go into deep into that is beyond the scope of this presentation. I'd be more happy to talk to people about that afterwards, but just some things for you to keep in mind. When people go and search on Google, what words they search for kind of dictates kind of where they're at and what they're looking for. So when someone is using transactional keyword phrases such as personal injury lawyer near me, that's a person who is looking for a lawyer right now. When someone types in something like, what is the statute of limitations for personal injury? They're in information gathering mode. They're not looking for a lawyer right now, but they're looking for additional information. So what I do strategically is I find out what are the keyword phrases that people are searching for. And with respect to my vlog, the title of my vlog that addresses frequently asked questions correspond with the information keyword phrases that people are typing in Google. YouTube is owned by Google, right? So when someone does a search on Google, the YouTube video shows up. That increases the likelihood that someone's gonna find my vlog. And once they find it, the content that I provide directly answers the question. So it's gonna be of value for them. If they stay longer on it, Google is gonna reward me for that. And my ultimate goal, that's why this approach takes time, is to have people trust myself as a reliable source of providing information on personal injury law, and eventually get them to watch more of my videos, and eventually get them to go to my website. The goal is to have the website as the one-stop source for all of their personal injury needs. I want to keep them there. You always want to take whatever leads or followers you get from the social network websites and bring them onto your own website that you control. Facebook could get canceled tomorrow. And then what are you going to do with your Facebook profile page? You always want to own your assets and create them. It takes more time, but organic content is much more powerful. So for own traffic marketing, it's all about building a personal brand and effective storytelling. So I always use this example, and I have many more, with Gary Vee. I'm pretty sure some of you are familiar with him. He owns a company, VaynerMedia, Inc. If you look at his LinkedIn page, he has about, and this might change because I did this recently, 5 million to 6 million followers, right? That's regard to his personal brand. If you look at VaynerMedia, 195,000, 200,000 followers, corporate brand. I'll give you other examples as well. But the key thing to take away here is that, when you develop a personal brand, you develop a person that people could actually see and actually connect with and have a really more intimate human connection with, right? When you have a corporation, it's almost faceless. There's no one there you could identify with or relate to. Gary Vee tells his personal story. He uses a lot of vulgar language. It's really authentic to who he is and his persona. People connect with that at a deeper level. That's why he has a lot more followers for his personal page. So the reason why I bring this up is that as a lawyer starting out, solo practitioner, I was like, how am I going to compete with these bigger law firms that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars probably per week? And I could probably barely spend when I first started like $5,000 in a month. Well, you have to focus on your strengths and not just on your weaknesses. And your strength is your ability to develop a strong personal brand that the big law firm with like over 200 lawyers can't do in the same capacity. And you could develop that real human connection much more better with people than they can. So earned traffic marketing comes from web content produced by third-party sources. So this is essentially where a third-party organization shares your original created content. So a perfect example of that is what I'm doing now. Speaking engagement. The third-party organization is who? Clio. Clio has a large marketing budget, much larger than me. They're marketing their event. Their focus when they market this speaking engagement is to promote the conference. But when they do that, they're indirectly promoting myself and my law firm. They're indirectly putting me in front of their large audience that I'm trying to get in front of in terms of my strategy and enhancing more brand awareness, right? If I had to spend money in paid traffic marketing to get access to that same large audience, I'd be spending a lot of money, but I'm not spending anything, right? So earned traffic marketing is another example of investment of your time, not investment of your money. This is my 14th speaking engagement of the year. I had one a week and a half ago in Toronto for the Law Society of Ontario. I have one 2 days on Friday back in Toronto as well. I do these a lot. It's a lot of time, but I invest the time, right? Because it's about enhancing my brand awareness, right? And then I get video footage. My girlfriend's in the audience, she records stuff. I will then start to share that on social media. That becomes a part of my online marketing. So you see how things are started connected and how things work. So earned traffic marketing equals earned respect. So social proof is a concept out there where It's a phenomenon where people people are thinking how they're going to act towards you. They copy how more respectable organizations or people with more influence treat you, right? So if you want to learn more of that, a good book is The Psychology of Influence by Robert Cialdini, who was a keynote speaker here last year. Strongly recommend you to read that. But for this, when you have someone like Clio who's talking about me, I also wrote a book, Catastrophic Impairment Law. You have my book publisher talking about me. I was featured in a newspaper article for helping to change the law in Ontario. They're interviewing. When you have all these things happening, they're not just redirecting traffic to your website, they're vouching for you as well, right? They're showing other people how to view you, right? Authority is a big one. Again, my book, Catastrophic Impairment Law, was published by LexisNexis Inc. When they say on their website that is an authority on catastrophic impairment law, it's better when it comes from them as opposed to me. Because when it comes from me, it sounds like bragging. But again, people who respect that company and trust them are going to believe what they say, because they know they have a vetting process when they're deciding, which authors whose books are going to publish. So, and ultimately it comes down to, influencing the leads that you generate, right? When you have a potential lead who sustained a catastrophic impairment and they have to make a quick decision over you and someone else, who do you think that person is going to pick? Someone who literally wrote the book on catastrophic impairment law, or someone who dabbles into PI occasionally, right? Is that the sole determining factor? Absolutely not, right? But my point is that you have to be cognizant of all of these various influential factors and make sure you stack them up, right? And that enhances the power of persuasion. And it's amazing how that might influence someone who's like, within 5 seconds, making that one decision over which lawyer to pick. And at the end of the day, if you get this right, most likely they'll pick you.
So at this point, our client has been attracted and has booked a consultation, and now is moving into the intake process. So maybe you can take us through how you structure your intake.
Yeah, sure. So earlier I walked you through the 5 steps of a law firm's growth, and the second one was lead qualification. So what I do is I rely on a questionnaire that I developed in Clio Grow, and it's a public form. It's a link that I redirect my clients to. So for example, if I'm doing a Facebook ad, in the Learn More button, the link will take them to this questionnaire for them to fill out. It's a qualifying questionnaire form, because if you look at the questions that I'm asking, they're crafted in such a way that only the kind of client that I'm looking for would be able to answer them, all right? So those are individuals who sustain more catastrophic injuries, right? Very important, because, again, I believe in the 80-20 principle, and I'm a solo practitioner. I can't spend numerous 30, 60-minute free consultations meeting with people only to find out that, I'm not the right fit. I'm not who you're looking for, right? Something like this enables myself and a new lead we don't waste each other's time, right? Just gives me an early idea. So when they complete this form, it's connected to my Clio Grow account. So a new matter is created in my Clio Grow account, and then I could kickstart the intake process, which I'll talk a bit about shortly. Customizing email templates. So not all the new leads that I generate from my advertising and marketing work are going to go to that form. I do my best to redirect them there. But as Mackenzie mentioned earlier, Clio Scheduler, I use that. I have that link available on my site. So it is possible that some of the leads that I generate will actually schedule an appointment with me first. So what I do, what Clio Grow allows you to do, is to set up customized emails that automatically go out to the person who filled out the form. So the message I send out is, I prompt them to complete that questionnaire, right? So that I can qualify that lead there. And if they don't do it and they just want to go ahead with the appointment anyways, I will still go ahead with the appointment because I don't want to miss out on an opportunity. But before I get into any details, I walk them through that questionnaire on the phone as I'm talking to them. So in the first 5 to 10 minutes, I can quickly know, okay, you know what, maybe I'm not the lawyer for you. And then we could, move on, right? So that's what I do. And it's automated, right? I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time qualifying leads, right? I know bigger law firms have people who just do that. As a solo practitioner, I don't. It's just me. So automation is my friend.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of different kind of activities or tips that you can use here, but how are they all connected? So that's where the Matter pipeline comes in. So if you're not familiar with Clio Grow, the Matter pipeline is a Kanban style board that allows you to move your leads along the different stages of your lead and intake process. So with the Matter pipeline, you can create custom statuses that allow you to customize each step along the way with tasks and email templates. So Andrew, you used to create tasks and emails kind of ad hoc when you started out using Clio Grow, but then eventually moved towards creating preset checklists and email campaigns. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit more about how you structure your Matter pipeline for intake.
Sure. So before I talk about this slide, which is really showing a page that shows like the tasks that I have to complete, I just want to make sure everybody knows what the Clio Grow Matter pipeline is. So people use that term a lot, but I'm not sure if anyone understands it. A pipeline is essentially the controlled path that a prospective client takes from being a lead towards being a retained client. It's that controlled path. And when you generate a new lead, they don't just jump to retained client in one step. It just doesn't work that way. There's usually more than one step that they have to take before they eventually become a retained client. So those steps is what Mackenzie's talking about that you customize, right? We call them Matter statuses. Those are the steps that a new lead takes towards becoming an actual retained client. So in the Matter pipeline, it's divided into 3 sections that are set, right? So the first section is the intake section. And I customize 5 steps that I bring my clients to. And that works for me. You might be able to figure out how to do that in 3 steps, and that works for you. The beauty of it, you can customize the intake section of the Matter pipeline. The next section is the hired section. I've customized 6 steps for me, and that works for me. Each step represents an objective that I want to obtain before I move that Matter card over to the next step. And my objective in the hired section of the Matter pipeline is to gather all the additional information I need so that file is ready to transfer to Clio Manage. Okay? So with what you're looking at here, this is the workflow section. So when a new lead fills out that qualifying form, a new Matter is created in my Clio Grow account, and then I have a Matter dashboard, which is a centralized hub that has all the information with respect to that new lead. And then at the bottom of that dashboard, you have what you see here on the screen, which is the workflow section. When I first started out, as Mackenzie said, I used to set up the individual tasks, set up the individual appointments, set up individual forms. But over time, again, you make dumb mistakes when you start out. Over time, I started to realize that I started to do the exact same thing over and over again for all of my new leads that I generate. So that's when I transitioned to setting up the client intake template, which is just a list of the tasks that have to be completed. And for me, they're the same tasks in chronological order that has to be completed all the time. So instead of writing them out individually, it just populates all at one time. And then I also use the email campaign template as well, because I just started realizing there's certain emails that I craft out all the time. So why not just create a template where they go out automatically? I don't have to think about it. And that's why, again, when I was in Europe, these emails were going out automatically when I generated a new lead, and I didn't have to worry about it, right? I just check periodically at night before I go to sleep. Yep, she went out, and then move on, right? So this slide here, so this is showing some of the tasks that I have in my client intake campaign. And what you're looking at, this is in regards to the intake section of the Matter pipeline, right? The tasks associated with the hired section are different. You guys follow that? So with the client intake checklist, you can see some of the ones that I use here, and they're all listed in chronological order. My number one objective is to book that free consultation with my client, right? So that's the first task. And once I complete that task, mission accomplished, I check off the box, and I'm on to the next task. And you can see the bar at the top. When you combine the task in the intake section with the task in the hired section, there's 16. So you can see here 8 of 16 complete. That's the progress bar, just to see the progress that I'm making. So once I complete the first 8 tasks, the progress bar will start to move. So you can see I'm halfway there. Not there yet, but I'm halfway there, right? So I like to see that to monitor progress that I'm making.
Yeah, and I like to put this in this kind of view here because it really helps you visualize exactly what's going on. So Andrew has his matter statuses listed at the top, and then underneath the checklist items that go along with it. And then at the very bottom, any email campaign templates that are associated with those matter statuses. Now, a lot of our Clio Grow users stop at the intake stage. As soon as that retainer agreement has been signed, great, move them to manage. But Andrew, you like to use the hired stage.
Yeah, a lot of my PI friends back home in Toronto who have Clio Grow, once they get contingency fee retainer agreement signed, they just transition to Clio Manage. And I view that as an opportunity to give your client more value, to satisfy Law Society of Ontario requirements. In your case, it'll be state bar requirements, as well as gather additional information. All right. So if we go to the next slide, now we're in the hired section of Clio Grow. So now, my first matter status has to do with I have the signed contingency fee retainer agreement, right? Because hired section means retainer agreement signed. Now I'm your lawyer. So in here with the client intake checklist, you can see one of the ones that's highlighted is the client intake form. I love that. I created a customized form that I always send out to my client after they retain me. And that saves me a ton of time. I used to set up another meeting with my client, and I would gather additional information like the name of the family doctor, the name of the physiatrist, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, all of the specialists they're seeing, the neurologist, the neuropsychologist. And I would just spend time gathering all that information. With the form now, I just send it out and they complete it themselves. And then once it's done, they send it back to me. And then I could just have all the information I need then to set up their matter in Clio Manage. With regards to the email campaigns, I have more emails that I send on the hired section than I do in the intake section. So for example, you can see the highlighted section there. One of the things I like to do is I spend time putting together these vlogs that answer frequently asked questions. And the same thing with my blogs. I used to spend more time after the client retained me answering frequently asked questions. And over time, the 3 years I was doing my own thing, I started to realize that they're asking the exact same questions. They're asking about, what are the stages of the litigation process? What are we suing for? Things of that nature. I would spend time meeting with them, answering those same questions. So what I've done is I set up an automatic email that goes out to them, and it contains links to a few of my vlogs and the corresponding blog. I do the video and the blog because some people prefer watching something, other people prefer reading. So that's a way of giving value and then cutting down on the time I spent answering the same questions after I've been retained. Another thing I like to do is I like to send out an email that provides the 4 or 5 easy steps for my client to download the Clio for Client app. I like to do that before I transition the file to Clio Manage because I want to get them used to it. Sometimes there's a bit of resistance to something new. I like to answer any questions they have in regards to that. And then I want to start the process of communicating with each other through using that app early on. I also use it as an opportunity to satisfy Law Society of Ontario requirements as well. I have to look at photo ID, identify who the client is, make sure that they are who they say they are. So I view it as a good opportunity, and I take advantage of it. And it really puts me in a good position to then transition to Clio Manage, transfer that file from Clio Grow to Clio Manage.
So just another recap here. This is the Andrew's hired section of his Matter pipeline. So Matter status is at the top, emails at the bottom, checklist items in the middle. And again, that email download for Clio for Clients app is right in Matter status 10.
Can I just add one thing about this? So the way it's set up, and Mackenzie said it's a Kanban style board. So after my client signs a contingency fee agreement, I'm moving a Matter card, my client's name on it, and I'm shifting it over. So I'm shifting it over to Matter status number 6, right there, right? And you can see in the row with the status name for Matter status number 6, that's indicating I just got the retainer agreement signed. The next objective for me, Matter status 7, is to deliver the form, the intake form that I mentioned. The checklist for Matter status number 7 corresponds with that objective, right? And then as soon as I complete that objective, what I do with that Mattis card, I shift it over, right? So it's just a good way to see what stage I'm at, both at the intake section and in the hired section, and I'm moving towards my objective. And this is why I say a pipeline is a controlled path. It's controlled because these stages are customized to something that I created. And I'm sure with all of the brilliant minds in here, you'll find a way to customize it for yourself. You don't necessarily have to do it the way I did. You got to find what works for you. So I mean, the takeaway from this is just, be cognizant of the different objectives you particularly want to accomplish in the intake section, the hire section, and make sure your respective headings that are at the top of the columns of your Kanban board correspond with that, and that your checklist corresponds with your specific objectives for each Matter status stage.
Great. So let's check back in with James. So at this point, Andrew is now retained by James, and James has been having a really great experience as a client because of all of the communication he's been receiving. Because Andrew is using Clio Grow, he only had to give that information once. He didn't have to go back and continue asking the same questions over and over. And then later when James calls Andrew to get a status update on his case, he's given a full update without delay. And that's because Andrew's been using Matter Stages, which is another Kanban style board, but this time within Clio Manage. So instead of helping your client move along the intake process, now you have your retained client moving through the different steps of the litigation process. So this slide that we keep flashing up here is these are Andrew's Matter Stages and the way that he moves his cases along the case lifecycle. Maybe you can speak to us a little bit more in depth about how you structure those Matter Stages.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because I'm able to see where all of my cases are at any given time. I get a bird's eye view of where they're all at. And you still have the same kind of Matter status card for each client, and then you're just moving it along at each stage. And when it came time for me to think about, well, what are the headings going to be for each Matter status stage, it just made perfect sense for me to pick the predictable steps in the litigation process. For every file that I start, I go through the exact same steps all the time. So it makes sense to organize all of your documents and your tasks according to the specific step in the litigation process that you're currently at, right?
Now, we don't have time to talk about every single stage within Andrew's Matter Stages, but we thought we would dive a little deeper into one of them.
So document discovery is, for me, the fourth step, the fourth milestone in my litigation process, which happens with every file that I have because it's mandatory. And document discovery, again, fact discovery from my American friends, is when I have to gather all of the relevant documents to the issues in dispute and provide them full disclosure to opposing counsel so they can see it and get a better idea of the case they have to meet. They have to do the same thing with me with respect to their client as well. So with the document discovery stage, there are specific tasks that are associated with that stage that I have to complete every single time. So instead of writing out the task individually, one by one, I create task list templates. And the task list templates, again, just like in Clio Grow, they lay out all of the different steps that I have to take when I'm at that particular stage. I view it kind of like how, pilots have their checklist before they fly off and before they land. Like for me, it just keeps me safe. It ensures that I'm consistent with the delivery of my legal services every time. And it ensures that I maintain a certain level of quality as well. And I'm not missing anything. Because as a solo practitioner, I don't have someone looking over me. I have to make sure I'm doing things right. So this kind of keeps me safe. You can see in the task list here, it's highlighted draft and notice of examination. Right? So with that, it's something I do all the time. So when I get there, I'm ready to check that off. I have, the one thing I want to mention as well is that with every task that are specific to the particular step in the litigation process you're on, there's also specific documents that you use every time at each particular step in the litigation process. So the notice of examination is a document, again, I use it for every single file that I have. So what do? I make sure I organize my documents in accordance with the stage that I'm at. And then I use document templates to populate, the additional information, name of opposing counsel, et cetera, within seconds. And then I get it out the door to opposing counsel quickly. This is an example of another document that I have to put together at the document discovery stage, the affidavit of documents. So my client signs and they swear that they, made a reasonable search of all their documents and that they gathered them all and they're sending them out to opposing counsel, full disclosure. I also have to sign, I'm not sure if you guys have to do this in the States, but in Ontario, I have to sign a lawyer certificate saying, basically swearing that I've told my client the importance of full disclosure and the requirements, to be honest, in gathering all the relevant documents. Again, every document discovery, there's not been one time where I have to do that because it's mandatory to do it in our rules of civil procedure. So why not have those documents there at that litigation stage? They're templated, right? The only thing that has to be changed is the court file number, the name of the plaintiff, the name of the defendant, right? And when you use document templates to create this, you literally press a button, it populates all that information in, and then it's out the door.
Right, and then you also are able to send that right within Clio Manage. So you don't have to leave Clio, you don't have to download the document, upload it somewhere else. You're able to just send that off right away. So to summarize these, this last little section here, similar to matter statuses, it's important to match your matter stages to the chronological steps within the litigation process.
Yeah, exactly.
So a part of that document discovery phase is medical records, and Clio now has a new personal injury add-on that will help you manage your medical records all in one place. So let's take a little bit of a look at the personal injury add-on. So although it's an add-on, it's built directly within Clio Manage, so you're going to see these tabs right within your matter. So to get to the medical records tab, you navigate to a matter, click right there, and you're in. And so the medical records tab is going to be organized by provider. So these providers can be contacts. If they're not contacts already, as you're adding a provider, you can set them up and create new contacts there. And we're kind of revisiting this theme of the old way versus the new way. So before the personal injury add-on, the best way to manage your medical record requests was to create a task within your task list to remind you to follow up on those medical record requests. And I think you have a task in your task list to do just that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, whenever it's time to, the thing I like about it as well is when you gather all the documents and the records, Clio Manage also enables you to share them seamlessly to opposing counsel as well. They have unlimited server capacity. So once you upload them, a download link gets sent to opposing counsel. They can download information relatively quickly. I don't have to print out anything. I don't have to use any other software to do that, file sharing software. Everything's centralized and located within Clio Manage, what I love.
Yeah. And now you can create those tasks directly from the medical records tab. So here I am, I've clicked on the medical records tab. I'm adding a new provider. You can see that St. Luke's Hospital provider up at the top. And now I'm going to add a treatment date. And the last treatment date as well. I'll mark whether that treatment date is complete, and then I'll move down to the medical record request date. It'll automatically pick another date 30 days out. And when I click create a task, it will assign it to me, and then I can click save. From there, you'll see that the medical records status is requested. And I have a follow-up date there as a reminder, but that task also dropped itself right into the task tab on my Matter as well. So another kind of old way of doing things is uploading your medical bills to your external hard drives, to your cloud storage, and to Clio manually. And now you're going to be able to upload your bills directly to the medical records tab and have them organized by your medical provider. So here you can see I've clicked Show More on the medical records tab. And this red box here is highlighting the medical bills section where you're able to upload those bills. And it's going to keep track of your the bill date, the date that you received it, as well as the bill amount, any adjustments you've made, and whatever's left over, whatever's owed still. Now, another old way is keeping track of medical liens in spreadsheets. And I know from our time talking together, you are done with spreadsheets, very sick of those spreadsheets.
Yeah, I mean, I would create a separate Google sheet, and I would track all the letters, requisition request letters to get the updated clinical notes records from the physicians. And I have to send them out, make 3 attempts, and I would track that in a separate Google sheet. And then, when I sent out money to the client, to the third party, I would track that as well in a separate Google sheet as well. I would organize separately like the invoices and stuff that I received. What I love about this, and I've just started using it, is just how everything's so centralized.
Yeah.
Right? I'm able to track my requests to the third parties. I'm able to upload the invoice in the same medical provider card. I'm able to upload the documents that I receive, right? And then I'm able to track what I spent out of my own pocket in terms of the disbursements as well, and see that. And then, of course, I think you're going to mention this as well. I'm able to add up the total, the amount of money that I spent to acquire all the clinical notes and records, and then export that as a PDF file to opposing counsel, and I'm getting ready for settlement.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So after you add all of your medical liens, they're going to be summarized on the damages tab under this medical damage summary. And so it'll be added into your total damages, but it'll also be on your settlement tab as well. So we'll get into the damages and settlement tabs a little bit more in depth later, but here's what the medical liens and outstanding balances section of the settlement tab looks like. So instead of having that summary, everything's going to be broken out. You can see the balance owed and the final amounts, and you're able to make reductions here so that you can keep track of your negotiations. So this is a different tip that actually, Andrew, you shared with me about tracking the principal amount and then the interest manually in the medical records tab.
Yeah, because some doctors, or most doctors, they say if you don't, pay us by a certain amount of date, then interest starts to accumulate. That usually doesn't apply to me. I usually pay them right away. But I know some lawyers don't. They like to wait until afterwards in settlement. So you could use that adjustment to not just track what you put down early and what's remaining in terms of balance owed, but you could also adjust it to show what the actual amount's going to be when you add the accumulation of interest to the principal amount.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So here I'm typing in the balance owed with the interest. So then at the end, you're able to see the total paid, the adjustment, and now the balance owed, so you can keep track of that interest. Now, this is another tip that you shared with me about creating that disbursement list using the expenses tab.
Yeah, I mean, with me, I go to trial very regularly. Not regularly. The vast majority of my matters, probably, I'd say like 95% of my matters are settled, and then maybe 5% of my matters actually end up going to trial, and that's when opposing counsel, insurance companies being completely unreasonable. So prior to a settlement conference, especially if I have a private mediation with a private mediator to help us resolve the issue, I'm required to send opposing counsel a disbursement list showing all of my accessible disbursements that I've incurred, because they want to know what additional money they got to pay in addition to what I'm claiming for in regards to the various heads of damages. So again, what I like about this feature is you're able to export as a PDF file the total amount for everything that you've incurred for the medical records. And then under the task folder, you could also add your various expenses. So I have a file now where I've spent about, I think, $25,000 in expert reports. So I would put those various expenses for income loss report, medical legal report, future cost of care report, all of those things as a separate expense. under the task folder. And then from there, I can export that total amount as well. And then prior to the settlement conference or the private mediation, I then simply give that to opposing counsel. If there's a private mediator involved, I give that to them as well, so that they know exactly what I'm asking for. And then they have a chance to review it to see if anything is not reasonable.
So a lot has happened on James' case up until now. So Andrew's been working on his case. He's gathered all of the relevant documents, medical records, and bills and sent that off to the opposing counsel. And throughout the whole process, James was able to communicate with Andrew because he downloaded that Clio for Clients app really early. He was able to share any important documents securely through the portal, and he was also able to receive calendar invites and automatic appointment reminders through that Clio for Clients portal. Well, we checked in with all of you and some of our other personal injury lawyers that take our legal trends report and found that 57% of personal injury lawyers said that managing client communications is difficult, painful, or frustrating. But we know that only 20% of our Clio customers are using the Clio for Clients app. Now, Andrew, you like to use the Clio for Clients app a lot for your clients. How are you communicating with them through that portal?
Yeah, I mean, many of my clients are impecunious, right? And they don't have scanners knocking about, right? So what I like about it is if they have to send me an important document, they can use their phone, take a photo of it, create a PDF file and send it to me. I also like how I don't have to create extra memos associated to the file. And what I mean by that is if, some of especially my teenage clients, the only way that they want to communicate with me is via text messages, which is what I used to do via my business WhatsApp as well as my cell phone. And then of course, if they blurted out an instruction, then I have to make a memo of the file that on this date, they sent this text and they gave instructions associated to the file. With the app, I'm able to, it tracks all of the correspondence and associates all that correspondence to the file. I don't have to make that extra memo anymore. And I think it's also a good point to talk about my teenage clients as well, because I think it's important for us as law firms to be able to adapt and meet our clients where they are and not expect them to make changes and meet us where we are. So we have to be very malleable and flexible in terms of providing our clients with different ways to communicate with us, because if not, that's going to create friction points. And if I have a teenage client who gets early on, and that's why I send out that email early on in the intake process stage to download the app, if they get, okay, I communicate with this lawyer the way I want, is that going to be a determining factor for them deciding me? No. But again, it's one of those one factors in addition to the other ones that might sway them to pick me as opposed to another personal injury law lawyer that they're considering.
Yeah, and text messaging isn't just good for your clients, it's also really great for you because 87% of text messages sent from Clio are opened within the first hour. So you know that your clients are receiving those messages from you. And then you're also able to text through Clio and spare your private number and keep everything centralized in one place. So, like I said, a lot has happened through James's case so far, and now we're moving into the final stages of our case. That could be a settlement. You might be prepping for a trial, but either way, we're coming towards the end. So we're going to talk a little bit about the damages and the settlement tab, and how these features can help you maximize your client settlement. So first off, I have the damages tab here. All you need to do is navigate to your matter, click on the damages tab. If you want to add a new damage, you just click new damage there. So I'm going to go ahead and click and enter a description, like pain and suffering, and then I'm going to add the amount and then select the type of damage as well. So I can do special, general, or other, and then everything's added up right there. Really easy.
My idea of what I'm asking for it has a damage is constantly evolving from my initial case theory to my subsequent case theories I write afterwards to after the examination for discovery or deposition, when I get a sense of how my client might look as a witness on the stand, if there's any credibility issues. Of course, the medical legal reports that I bring in might influence my assessment of damages. There's a lot of things. So I love, and so what I'm asking for, what I'm thinking it's worth. Also when I do my legal research to find cases that are factually similar to my own. All these things influence my decision. So I'm constantly changing the heads of damages based, as the file evolves. And I love that I'm able to centralize like where I do that. Mm-hmm. And it's all within the matter of the file that I'm working on.
Yeah, and then the settlement tab is also going to help you make those swift calculations. So our settlement calculator lives within the settlement tab. All of your legal fees, your deductions, any of the medical liens are already automatically brought over. And so now we're just going to add a recovery. So what I'm going to do here is click on new recovery. I'm going to enter the source. In this case, it's going to be Allen State Insurance. I'll enter the amount. I'm going to keep my default contingency fee there for that 33.3%. And there you have it. You have your total recovery on the left, your net compensation for your client right in the middle, and then you have a breakdown of everything over on the right. Here you can also make reductions really easily. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom to medical liens, click edit, and add my reduction there, click save. You'll see that reduction reflected there at the bottom, but when I scroll up to the top, now my net client compensation has gone up and my deductions have gone down. Another great thing about the settlement tab is that you're able to export all of this. So if you need to send it off to your client, if you need to send it off to opposing counsel, or you just want to manipulate that data in an Excel spreadsheet, you can do that all just by clicking the export button. So with this new personal injury add-on, previously we haven't really been able to manage the end part of your litigation process within Clio. You've had to kind of come up with a lot of makeshift ways, spreadsheets and things. But now with Clio's personal injury add-on, you're able to drive better outcomes for your clients and support people like James and help them win the best settlement possible. So to reiterate, now you're able to manage everything from first contact to settlement and everything in between. And Clio's personal injury add-on covers that gap of those last little bits of that process. But we also know that you are managing medical records and settlements throughout the process there. So the personal injury add-on can really start from the very beginning all the way to the end of that process right when you hop in Clio Manage. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the personal injury add-on, please go downstairs, check in with our Level Up with Clio area, and they'll give you a full demo and answer any of your questions. And if you scan your badge to be added to the waitlist, you'll also be entered in for a chance to win a Breville espresso machine. And so we covered a lot today, but I want to kind of come back and finish with kind of our final tips from Andrew here.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to the settlement calculator, when I'm going to a settlement conference or a private mediation conference, let's be honest, my client wants to know the bottom line. They don't really care about the deductions, about your legal fees, about the total amount. They want to know, after all said and done, what am I walking away with in my pocket? That's really, be honest, what they care about. And what I do, and I'm pretty sure a lot of PI lawyers do this as well, is I create Google Sheets every time I go into a settlement conference, and I put the mathematical formulas in the cells, which takes up a lot of time. So I could quickly put in numbers, and then I get calculations. So I could tell my client, this is what you'll get. Because they are not going to accept any offer until they know what they're walking away with, right? So that helps them make their final decision, an informed decision, and then we could go ahead and close the file. So what I love about the settlement calculator, it does enable me to not have to create those Google Sheets all the time, and be able to tell my client, what they're going to get, make the adjustments to the heads of damages, because usually when you're making a first offer, usually it's simple. They break down, this is what you're getting for general damage, pecuniary, special damage, etc. So you can make those adjustments in the damages tab and see what that relates to in the settlement calculator, right? But like I said, at the end of the day, you can be able to tell your client, this is what you're going to get, and help them make that informed decision, right? In terms of whether or not they want to accept the offer or not. But in terms of last tips, it's just, being able to deal with all your medical records in one central location, I think is brilliant. I've started to utilize this. I've only been using it for a few weeks now. And also in terms of structuring and organizing Clio Manage, as well as Clio Grow, it should revolve around, for Clio Manage, of milestones, predictable steps in the litigation process. That's the easiest way to do it. Because as I said, there's specific documents, there's specific tasks associated with each stage. It just makes much more sense and makes your life so much easier.
Great. Thank you for that, Andrew. Unfortunately, we don't have any time for Q&A today, but just want to quickly share our information. So again, my name is Mackenzie Kerr. My email address is there. And then also thank you to Andrew. I'm mixing up your name now. Andrew Leroy Rutter for all of your great tips. We'd love to talk to you after about any questions that you have. So please come up and talk to us. I'll also be down in the product lab if you have any questions there. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.